Hello my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious or you're lost. I'm Chatty and welcome to my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter, where I will be chatting away madly about all the spoilers for the books I read in July. And these are 5 of them. There we go. 5 of the books I read in July. 2 of them have now gone. 1 is back at the library because I couldn't renew it. The other ones I was able to renew. And another one is with my brother because he wanted to borrow it. So I also have those as well. I did do, so I'm putting these down because they're very heavy. There we go. So I have already done a July wrap up where I talk about the 7 books that I've read and give you kind of like an overview of what I thought of them, but without spoilers. So if you haven't seen that, go and look at that one. It will be linked somewhere here. Because I'm just going to go bang in with the spoilers, and the rest of the stuff I haven't said. I'm not going to kind of ease you in gently, tell you what the book's about, and then go into the spoilers, because I've already said that. So that is out there if you wanted to go and check it. I've put timestamps on everything, so it's easier to find your way around. If there's a certain book that you want to know about, but you don't really care about the rest, it should be quite simple for you. But this is spoilers. So if you are someone who was not aware this video is about spoilers, and doesn't want spoilers for any of these books, which are The Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl by Joya Goffney, The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, Inkdeath by Cornelia Funke, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chang, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, and The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. If you don't want those books spoiled for you, do not watch this video because I'm talking spoilers. So there we go. Some books will be more spoilery than others, but I have got 11 pages of notes with everything I want to say. And I think some things I haven't included on the notes because I've just read through everything I read, because it feels like I wrote these a week ago. And I'm only just sitting down to be able to film this video because it's the summer holidays. My filming ability is not what it was. We're doing lots of summer holidays things, so I'm squeezing stuff in where I can. So this could be very chaotic. Please bear with me, but hopefully you will enjoy hearing my thoughts on these books. So let's crack on. It's one shot, there's no editing, hence this is probably going to be chaotic. So here we go. So before I start, I did want to just talk a little bit about trigger warnings for these books, because whilst I was reading these books, I realised that there is a lot of violence in these books, and there's also quite a bit of sexual content as well. So I just kind of wanted to give you a bit of a heads up on those. As always, I will be linking the story graph links for the books, so you can click on those in the description box. It will take you over to Storygraph, where you will be able to see all the trigger warnings, have a synopsis about the book, get more of an idea of kind of the tone of it. They do this kind of percentage of like how many people think it's like an adventurous book, a tense book, a dark book, a funny book, a light-hearted book, all of that stuff. And there is also trigger warnings as well, so you can see kind of like mild, moderate, graphic, kind of what different people think this book has, to give you an idea of whether this book is for you or not. And it also links to reviews as well. So there are quite a lot of it's always quite hard to describe, I think, because everyone has their own kind of tolerance and opinions of what some people would say was very graphic, someone else that constantly reads maybe a lot of like grimdark and like war boy based books where there's a lot of kind of violence and bodily harm, might think that that was kind of mild, whereas if you tend to not read a lot of books that have any violence in them, then you might find it quite graphic. But in general, I think that there is like explicitly said violent stuff in Inkdeath, She Who Became the Sun, The Mad Ship, A Court of Mist and Fury. Again, different levels within that, and I will come onto it when I talk about the individual books about how it's done. I would say none of these books are like gratuitously violent I have read other ones where it is a lot more so, but it is still in there, so I just wanted to let you know about it. In Addie, LaRue and the Emperor's Soul, there are some things that are violent, but not to the same extent as in the ones I already mentioned. In terms of sex, there is in ACOTAR, Mist and Fury, and in She Who Became the Sun, there is very explicit wording within the scenes, you know, body parts go into other people, basically, and that is described in the text. In Addie, LaRue and Madship, it is sex is happening, but it's not like a blow-by-blow, step-by-step account of it. It's kind of the overall feel of it. And in Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl, there is no actual sex scene, but there are scenes of a sexual nature where there's an attempted sex, and they discuss it a lot. So that should give you an overview of those kind of things. And now I'm going to crack on. So I'm going to start off with talking about the Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl. I absolutely loved this book, and one of the things I loved most about it was the message in here. This is a story of Mo, short for Monique, who is the daughter of a preacher, is in a long-term relationship, wants to have sex, but literally physically can't. And the message that really comes through in this book is that Mo's body is hers, and it doesn't belong to anyone else but her. And virginity is not a prize or a reward. That's a kind of an irrelevant thing, and it shouldn't be seen as that. Like, no one deserves it. It's just related to her. It shouldn't concern other people. And lots of really positive messages about consensual sex. I think this is it should be very clear what is consensual and what isn't. People always like to talk about like grey areas, and that's kind of when you look into the kind of like the pressurization within it. So people can say, oh, it's consensual because they did it, but what led them to doing it? You know, that kind of the coercing, like the threats, the pressure of that you should do it. And I think that's really looked at in this book. If anyone else likes me, really kind of enjoys the wrong word, but appreciates this subject, do check out the video about drinking tea because I just love that video so much. It's very clear. If you have any concerns about what is consensual, change sex with trying to give someone a cup of tea, and it makes it very clear what is consensual. I might see if I can link that video below, just because it's really fun if you've never come across it. And in here, it really kind of goes into that, you know, consensual sex means no one should feel like they should have sex. You know, it should be unpressured. Both people involved should be ready and should want to have sex. I also really like the kind of exploration that girls kind of fall into two categories at like an extreme end. And this is not something that boys fall into. And it is, again, that societal view that girls are either good virgins or dirty whores. And it leads to this societal pressure on sex and kind of how people think about sex. And I just really appreciated that this book touched on that. It deals with a very kind of unknown medical condition. I had never come across this before. It is called vaginismus. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but that's what we're going with, vaginismus, where the body physically kind of like shuts. I'm doing hand gestures here of closing a small hole. Literally shuts down and nothing goes through. It has kind of like psychological kind of links, and it is a medical condition. And it continues with this theme that, you know, everyone's sexual journey is very different, and, you know, we should not have societal pressure on top of our own feelings. It just doesn't help with people's health, really. And I just think this book handled it so well and was so fantastic. I love the friendship in this one. So you have the three unlikely friends. You have Mo, our main character, the preacher's daughter. You have Sasha, who is a girl that Mo knows, who goes to her church, who she sees as this ridiculously goody person that she thinks just can't be for real. She very much kind of represents what her mum wants her to be and what she feels she should be as the preacher's daughter. But Sasha kind of gives off this holier than thou vibes, which kind of rubs Mo up the wrong way. And then you have Reggie, who is this the bad boy type thing. He is troubled teen that is like a little project by her father, who wants to help him find, what's the word? Kind of like the prodigal son type of thing, or the black sheep of the family, like, turn him into good. Both Mo's boyfriend Dom and her mum think Reggie is a lost cause, and good luck to Mo's father. But we find how Mo has misjudged both of these, and there is hidden depth to these other characters in here. And as well as Sasha and Reggie, there are some other characters in here that we kind of do like a 180 on. You see them in a certain light, and then actually later on in the book you perceive them in a different way to how they are initially presented, because we're seeing all of this through the eyes of Mo, and there are lots of hints for the reader that we want Mo to pick up on, and it's done so well. So this 180 is not a shock. All the clues are in the text, and Mo slowly gets to that way of looking at things, and we go on that journey with her as a reader. So Sasha, it turns out, although she loves God, loves going to church, praises, is seen as a sort of very good academic student, she is really clued up on sex and sexual health, and has this real big confidence with everything, and kind of more of a side that no one else sees, kind of outside of those places that Mo has known before. And Reggie, we see that he's kind of playing into this trope that people have designed. So people have judged him that because he's broken a few rules before, that he's this out and out waste of space, no redeeming features. And he sees that, and his way of looking at life is to find the fun in it. And so he kind of plays on people's perceptions of him and does things because he knows they expect that to be, and he's basically kind of laughing back at them. And I really enjoy how the unhealthy relationship that Mo had with Dom contrasts to the really healthy friendship she has with Sasha and Reggie. And she really comes to see that Dom views things by what's in it for him and what he wants, whereas the friends were immediately like, Mo, how are you? Are you okay? How is this? And there's no pressure, there's support, there's love, and she really starts to see the difference between that, and I really love how that's done. Yeah, and then there's the whole family side, so Mo's relationship with her parents as well, and her sister. I really enjoy how that's explored in the book, and her auntie. There's a really interesting family dynamic, and I love how it gets to the point where things come out in the open and they are spoken about and discussed, and then we have this forgiveness and healing process as well, which I think is really lovely. And I love how that's all shown and come about. It's not just going to be brushed under the carpet. There's not just going to be a black and white this way or that way. There's a learning that happens with how they interact with each other and how they respect each other and how they might need to change their views on things, and I thought that was fantastic. And there is, yes, and this book obviously has really excellent feminism within here, and I want to read part of the author's note as well, because I think I can't say it any better than the author of the book says it. So I'm going to read a paragraph from the Dear Reader at the end of the book. So this is from Joya Goffney. I wrote this book to bring awareness to vaginismus and to maybe help someone who doesn't know what's happening with their body. Also to bring light and love and humour to a very difficult topic for me and others like me. I hope this book can heal some of the toxic ways our society views sex and inspire you to reclaim your sexual identity without shame or fear. So that is Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl. And I just recommend that people pick this up and read it because it's fabulous. So the next book that we are looking at is The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. Second book of the Liveship traders. So there will be spoilers for Ship of Magic in here as well, which is the first book. There won't be spoilers for the Farseer trilogy because I'm not going into that side of things in this one. I'm very much going to be talking more about the characters and the plot, and I'm not going to be kind of going so explicitly into it. So within reading this book, within Ship of Magic, I mentioned that I have adopted the Liveship Vivacia. So these are ships that families trade on, and after 3 generations of captains where they die on the deck of their boat, that helps the wizard wood that the boats are made out of quicken, and then the figurehead will become alive after the 3rd captain dies on board. They kind of absorb the memories and the feelings and things from there, and that helps to craft their character. So they're very much family ships. They're part of the family, literally, and they can help support the crew. They can make more of an effort when sailing and spot things, and they're kind of like part of another member of the crew sailing the ship. So I adopted Vivacia. We saw her quicken in the Ship of Magic. There was all sorts of tragedy that happened, and at the start of this book she became a slaver. There was a riot, and then she was captured by pirates. The one family member, Wintro, is on board and still with her, but he is not naturally a sailor. He wanted to be a monk. The ship should belong to Anitha, who was the daughter of the captain that died and was the most sailory, but for family reasons they gave it to the elder daughter to try and keep everything to kind of have their fortunes made, because Anitha was very young. So we have all sorts of that going on in this book, and it picks up exactly where all of that left off. So we have Vivacia and Wintro and their relationship with the pirates kind of going on. So I was scared for them, not only because of that situation, because compared to Wintro's father Kyle, the worst character ever, well, one of, it's actually not as bad to be captured by pirates. But I worry about the manipulation that is going on here. So I worry about what's going to be happening to Vivacia. She has been totally traumatized by everything that's going on, and it's awful. And Wintro has also been traumatized by things that have been going on, and so they have this tricky relationship together. You don't see as much of it in this book as you did in the last one. Other characters kind of have more of a centre stage. In this one we have a lot more focus on Cait the pirate and his continuation to become the Pirate King. Now he has his live ship in Vivacia, and how he tries to control the ship and control the story for him. We have a lot more of that, and we have Etta, who is a very fantastic character, and it's really interesting to see more of her change, and we get more of her feelings and things in this one. So we have a lot more Etta and a lot more Cait in this book. And we also have more Paragon, who I adopted in this book. So Paragon's another live ship, and he has been beached because we thought that Vivacia had a traumatic start to life. Paragon had an even more immediate one, as I believe his family members, because it's all very muddled, his logbooks are stolen, he has no exact memories because of this, he's got severe PTSD, we don't really know what's been going on with him, but from histories, the 3rd person that died on the ship was the child, and was killed. So he was quickened by murder, and he was kind of came alive through all of that horror happening to his family around him. So that is incredibly damaging, and everyone believe that that was what sent him mad, and they think he's killed his family and he's gone out on other voyages and like overturned and come floating back to the harbour, having caused lots of death, so that they just beached him. He's been on the beach for a really, really long time. And some of our characters have made friends with him and have tried to heal him. And in this story, we get more from him. And it was just so emotional, kind of like hearing how much he's been through, and kind of what he wants and how he feels about people starting to help him. And he ends up being sold by his family so that he can be put back on the water. And this is so distressing because Liveships are never sold by their family, they are part of the family. So that pain was so big. But I really loved all these scenes with Anitha and Brashen and Amber, who are all working to try and make Paragon seaworthy, and they want to take him out on the water again. And this is what I've been wanting since we first met Paragon in the first book. We wanted him to sail, we wanted him to get back out on the water, and it actually happens in here, and it's so exciting. I really love the friendship between these three. Well, I love the friendship between Brashen and Anitha, and I love the friendship between Amber and Anitha. I think Amber and Brashen aren't quite there yet. But they all want the best for Paragon. They all want to get him onto sea, and they kind of club together to do that. And I just love all of those scenes. I also really, really love the messy relationship between Anitha and Brashen. So they've had all of this miscommunication in the previous book, and as much as like miscommunication is usually really annoying, it really fits well with the characters in this one because they're so broken. They've been through so much, they're so vulnerable in different ways. It kind of makes sense about how they react to certain things. It seems very truthful, and yes, you kind of want to make them just talk to each other, but you get why they're not. And in this book they talk to each other. They overcome all of the messiness and realise what they really miss is the camaraderie they had as shipmates. They miss that feeling, they miss that friendship. And so to get back to that point, they open up all the messy stuff and move on from it so they can have this trusting relationship again. And I love that so much. I also really enjoyed Anitha talking to Amber about it and her kind of growth and exploration of her actions and herself within that she gets to a point of acknowledging her own responsibility as well as not just trying to blame everything on other people. And I thought that was fantastic. And I loved some of the banter that was happening on here, with Amber pointing out to Anitha, maybe you should talk to him more than just saying, pass the hammer. That kind of really tickled me a bit and I enjoyed it. And I've lost my notes because that is the last one. Why is that there? Bear with whilst I shuffle around. Nope, done with that one now. Okay, found the next notes. And what I also really love about the relationship between Brashen and Anitha, which I think is something that has troubled me a lot when I've seen kind of romantic relationships between males and females before, where you have this man must protect woman situation and it's sold as love, whereas what actually is happening is a kind of stealing agency from the woman a bit. So what I really loved about Brashen and Anitha is Brashen is very aware that Anitha needs to stand on her own feet to be respected by the crew. They need to respect her because she's her, not because Brashen's forced them to respect her. So he manages to pull in all his feelings for her, and anything that like scares him about her getting hurt, he manages to pull that all in and trust that she will deal with it and she will come out on top. And we see that it's hard for him and we see that it hurts him, but he does it. And I just think that's so fantastic. So rather than being selfish in terms of the I'm doing this because I don't want you to get hurt. I want to look after you. I want to protect you. Like, the thought of you getting hurt really upsets me. It's actually being selfish, because what you're saying is, rather than you being able to do things and get your sense of achievement and like earn your place, I am basically being really selfish because I can't cope with feeling sad or angry because of things that happen to you. So I really love this respect and this mutual trust they have. And I really hope that in the Ship of Destiny that it is rekindled into a relationship, because I really love the two of them together. Another character that has fabulous growth in here is Malta, who was so annoying in the previous book. Really annoying and really bratty. And what I love in this one is we have not only her fantastic growing up, it's just we have so many moments where things happen to her we know she's going to be annoyed with a lot. So she has this almost like fantasy of how she wants to be seen and how she wants to be viewed and how she wants her life to play out for her. And the people in her life don't always fit into the roles she has designed for them. Like, they're not following the script she's imagined would be happening. And I love how we kind of get this kind of like wake up call from her. I find it really funny. But she does wake up and she steps up and she suddenly realizes that the bigger picture is here, and all her thoughts and kind of things before are petty and don't have a place. And she matures and we can root for her, and I really love it. So by the end of this book, I'm really on board with Malta, and I think she's fantastic. I also really enjoy the politics that we get in this one. So it was hinted at in the Ship of Magic, and it really comes into play in this book of the Bingtown politics between the old traders, the new traders. Should we have slavery? Should we not have slavery? Who gets to control the ports? Who gets more of the income? What do we think of the threat of Chalcedon, which is the state next to them, where they are very misogynistic and they have a lot of slaves? We also get more of Jamila. So we get the satrap, who is like the leader of Jamila, which is a town much, much further down the coast, but they have this kind of like treaty, kind of protective, like overruling from Jamila. So again, there's a lot more of this. Should we be ruled by them? Should we strike for freedom? They're not holding up their part of the treaty. So you get all of that kind of going on. And I really love the character Ronica in all of this, and how she thinks about things. And there's a really kind of, I find it really interesting how you can disagree with someone's viewpoints and things, but you can still be friends with them. And I think that's really fascinating that it's kind of touched on this book as well. And I have a character that I hate, another character I hate in this book. So Kyle, who was previously hated, now has a rival in the satrap. The ruler of Jamila is a terrible person. Terrible, awful person. And there is a scene in here, so again, really trigger warnings in here, because there is a sexual assault scene. And his reaction to the scene is so atrocious and so sickening. I just feel there's no redemption for him from that. There's just nothing. So yes, we have another character I hate as much as Kyle now. Kenneth, I touched on earlier, very interesting, and I have moments where I almost wonder, could he be having some kind of redemption change? And then you hear his thought process and you're like, no, I still hate you, and I hate you more because you're devious and you're manipulative and you look like you're a nice guy, but the way you think about Etta and the way you think about Vivacia and Wintrow and people as though you own them and you're using them and they're all like little pawns in your game, but you're telling them lovely things and they think you're amazing, makes me hate you more. So yes, I really struggle with that. So I had such a fantastic time with this book. I am scared and terrified of Ship of Destiny, where it's the final one within this trilogy and where it's all going to go. I'm terrified for Paragon, I'm terrified for Vivacia and all the ones I love in here. yes, I'm just generally quite terrified of what's going to happen to them. But I'm trusting if there are bitter moments, then the whole feeling is going to be bittersweet at the end. I'm trusting that. But Hobbs' world-building characters is always amazing. I have faith that the story will get there. I'm just scared. I'm just really scared about my poor little ship babies. I've really loved reading this on and chatting in the Discord on Gregory LaPerche's channel. There are live shows from Anitha's channel and Gregory LaPerche's channel on these two books. The discussion's been so much fun. And Cait, the almost book doctor, has very much advocated for therapy for pretty much the whole cast of these books, but particularly the live ships. They need a lot of therapy. So that would be nice if they could get that before we have Ship of Destiny, so that they are ready and prepared for everything that Hobbs going to throw at them. But yes, I love this series. If you're a fantasy reader and you haven't read Robin Hobb, please do. You will not regret it, I feel. If Farseer doesn't work for you and you really don't like it, do pick up Ship of Magic. And also, if you want more information on Farseer, please check out Derri's read it before, because she's read The Realm of the Eldling so many times and has such a fantastic in-depth and thoughts on it, and she's a great person to talk to, so I'll link her channel here. Okay, 2 books down, 5 to go, and we're already on half an hour. Marvellous, marvellous. Hooray for timestamps. Right, we're on to Inkdeath. This is the final book in the Inkworld trilogy. It is sold as a middle grade, but it's a YA, guys. This is dark. It's dark. Although there's... yeah, it's dark. It just is dark. It's dark, it's dense, it's big. I did enjoy it, but not as much as I hoped, just because it's missing the kind of lightness to balance out the dark for me. There wasn't enough light in here that I need in my books, I think. So we have Maggie has been the protagonist of Inkheart and Inkspell, and in here we have a kind of a breakaway. So we have Maggie, but we also have Mo, who kind of starts to take over as a protagonist, and I feel that Mo is more of the protagonist in Inkdeath than Maggie. Really fascinating story, really enjoyed his story. We get more of Maggie's mum and Mo's wife, Risa, in this story. She has more of an active role, whereas she was kind of a bit more on the sidelines before. So I enjoyed all of that, but I did feel it came at the cost of Maggie kind of taking a bit more of a backseat in the story, which made me a bit sad. There is another kind of storyline going on that she is part of, but she's not as fully involved as she had been in the other 2 books, which made me feel a bit sad. I really love the glass men in this series. These are little men made of glass that help kind of stir the inks and sand the paper when you're writing. So they're kind of these little writing assistants, which I think is adorable. So we got to meet a few more of those in here, and I think they're fantastic. And I love their little relationships with some of the humans in here. So obviously we have Bengolia, the writer of the story, and we have Orpheus, who has such a ridiculous ego that it is unreal. Finaglia has one as well, but we like him, so we can kind of forgive it. And also we have Farid, who's kind of trying to connect the story, wants it in a certain way, so it's kind of bringing them in, and he ends up rescuing one of the glassmen, which is really lovely. So yeah, I suppose that was probably the lightest part of the story. We have another castle that again is very, very dark. So all of these things are kind of sold as this is a nicer place to be going in, and then you get there, it's like, it's not actually a nicer place. You lied to us. This is really oppressive and dark and feels really awful and weird. And that's because we have this fantastic character called Violante. She's very complicated. She's very tragic. And I still don't think we've got a grip on her yet. I still feel there's more to her, and I haven't quite got there with her. So she has the unfortunate, I've lost words, being problem. Her dad's a villain, awful person, and she wasn't loved by her husband, despite the fact that she loved him, and her son is atrocious, and she is trying to make the best decisions. She doesn't want the life that they kind of go down. She doesn't she could do it if she was pushed to it, but she doesn't enjoy the kind of the torturousness. She wants to rule more effectively than that, but she does want power. She does want to rule. So I find her really, really interesting. But yeah, she's dark and tragic, so it's not fun. So yeah, her father, the Adderhead, was really terrifying in Inkspell, and is even more repulsive and evil in Inkdeath, and is pretty gross, like hearing about him at times in here, and it is quite graphic. We also have the atrocious character of Orpheus as well, who you felt could possibly have some sort of, not redemption, but could be useful slightly, and he proved to be not the case at all. But what is interesting is that he's left at the end of the book, like he's still floating around Inkworld to cause chaos. So there could be other stories from this world. I wouldn't want more of a continuation of Mo and Meggie, but other characters, it would be interesting if they were kind of picked up and more was done with them. There is that possibility. I don't know if Cornelia Funk has any plans to do that, but there is a possibility that could happen. So the lightness that came into the story was when two characters kind of came back. So one of these is Eleanor, who is the aunt of Mo and Meggie, who was left in our world. Everyone else went into the book, and she was left with Darius, and has been kind of been upset that she's lost her family. Her family have disappeared into a book, and she can't get to them. So she finally is read into the book by Darius, and the moment she gets into Inkworld, the story feels a lot lighter again. She's been very much missed. I mean, it was just very tragic before because she was crying about her family. But now we get her practical and her no-nonsense approach to things in here, and her try sort of whipping people into shape. And it was just very much light-hearted relief that was needed. I really enjoyed her bickering with Fengolia, the writer, in here. And I did enjoy that one of the Australian players seemed quite taken with her. And I was hoping that might go somewhere, but it didn't. But that would have been nice. And the other character that made comeback in here was Dustfinger. He does come back from the dead. We are all the better for it. I really like Dustfinger. I enjoy his kind of, the way his relationship with Mo has grown. They've kind of got more of a brotherhood respect. So I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed seeing Dustfinger again. But yeah, generally it just felt really dark and heavy. There was not enough lightness for me. I wanted Meggie to have more of a prominent role. But it was enjoyable, and I did like to see where the story went and kind of finished. But I loved Inkheart on kind of like a different level. It was comforting in a way that this is not comforting. And it was joyful. This still does have at the chapters of each, the top of the chapters where, oh, there's one. Where are all the chapters? You have a quote from a book at the top of each chapter, and it kind of reflects what will happen in that chapter. So I still enjoyed all of that. So you still had a lot of that in here. But generally, there wasn't as much talk of stories and storytelling as there had been in the previous two books. So I kind of missed that a bit as well. So there we go. That's that one. Right, we're on to Court of Mist and Fury. I don't have the book for this one because I had to take it back to the library because I'd renewed it 4 times. So again, I'm trying not to touch on stuff I've already spoken about in not only my June wrap-up where I paused it, but also the July wrap-up where I talk a bit more about what I struggled with in this book. And I struggled with this book. So one of the big things kind of with this fantasy side of things is that we're just told how scary these characters from the Night Court are. They're not liked, they're feared by everyone, they're told they're really horrible people. But we don't see any of that. That's just like, we're just told about it. It's not until you're 2/3 into the book that we actually go to the scary Night Court and see it. I was like, I could have done with that right at the beginning, so I know I'm supposed to be scared of them, because I don't get that feeling because we're being, especially because they're trying to change their reputation, and Rysand is trying to show us he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. He's not scary. It's fine. So because of that, I'm like, well, you're not scary then, are you? I'm not scared of the people in Night Court. I'm not sure what reputation you're trying to get away from. So we don't actually see it until, I think it's 2/3 into the book. I'm going to say 2/3. And we're at the Night Court, but we're not shown a huge amount. We're basically shown a party, and it's like an orgy where people say mean things to each other. So it could have been in a contemporary book, really. You know, just having this bitchy party with people getting a bit jiggy with it. So I didn't feel it gave me as much of the world. The world building doesn't suit me. We're just given pretty everything in this little town, of the secret town that Rysand is secretly keeping, where he would like the whole world to be. It's just beautiful. Everything's beautiful. It's all lovely. There's lots of pretty descriptions, but it doesn't feel substantial to me. I feel like it just doesn't quite work for me. It feels very like on the surface and not like deep in, which is what I need from my fantasy. But if this is all a facade for the romance and it's just kind of a backdrop, then that's fine. But the romance wasn't getting me either. I've already spoken about my issues with it. The banter I was hoping for wasn't there. It kind of flails between Rysand trying to prove he's a good guy. It's okay, he's a good guy. Freya going huffy and throwing shoes everywhere and just generally taking offence whenever she feels like it, to then making random jokes about underwear. It's either like innuendo or serious. Like, I'm not, the chemistry and the fun that I want from my romances, just, it's not there. It's not there for me. So it's not selling me on either side. Which just then makes me pull apart everything. Because I'm like, what is this? What are you doing? Why does everyone love it? And when the story started to get going a bit more, and there was a plan, and then the plan started to happen, I was like, okay, fine, we're getting somewhere a bit more. And then Feyre went and ruined it all by having a strop. So I love it when she goes, I don't love it, I enjoy it more. Something is happening when she goes off and hunts and captures. I can't even remember the name of these things that can tell you stuff. Weird ghosts that will tell you things if you stick them in some sort of trap and hang them up suspended by their ankle. And she finds out that Rye's her mate. I'll go into how I'm not sold on the whole mate thing in a moment, but her reaction is, why didn't you tell me? It's like, have you been following your relationship, dear? It's you had this kind of like I hate you situation going on. You were supposedly going to marry someone else. He's this bad guy you don't like. You're suffering from severe PTSD. You're throwing up everywhere, having nightmares. I don't think him going, by the way, I'm your mate, is going to kind of work with any kind of happy relationship for you guys. I mean, that's blatantly obvious. And not only is she going off in a strop, like she's basically saving him from death's door, but then she's mad at him, dumps him and goes off. It's just like, I just don't get the logic behind this. It's just so bloody stupid. It's just like, I thought in terms of fantasy, threat and tension, we're being sold that stuff's going to go down and they need to get on with getting some sort of plan in place, recruiting, getting ready for this fight. But it's okay because she's got time to go and have like a week recreational, like, you know, as close to a fantasy spa retreat as she can get, really, to sort out her feelings that she wasn't told she was his mate. And it just, the mind boggles, quite frankly. It's just very self-indulgent, and you're never going to solve anything unless you talk to someone. Stupid, stupid, stupid. And everyone acts like that's totally fine, normal behaviour. So yeah, no, not winning me over at all. And as much as I'm not invested in their relationship, I preferred this kind of concept of liking each other as people and a physical attraction and growing into love. Then this whole mate aspect comes in, and it's like this predestined insta love situation, and we're just constantly sold again on this how Rye's amazing and is like the best person ever, and he's so nice, and everything he did in the last book was because he knew she was his mate and he had to protect her, and this is the only way he could protect her. And it's like, no, you've just taken all, if there was any fun and amusing edginess, you've just ruined all of that by trying to turn him into a paragon. I would much prefer it to him to be like, sorry, I was playing every card I had to deal with the situation I needed, and now I realise that everything I did actually hurts me because I really like you. That would have been so much more preferable, because all of the tension is just kind of taken out, and like just slap a mate sticker over the whole top, and it's just like, bleh. It just didn't work for me, didn't work. And so all the other things I just wasn't going to get on board with either. When you have the sisters being thrown into the cauldron and you've got the Lucian and Elaine, of course she's his mate, of course. And I just found the whole thing funny. I wasn't getting the emotional investing in this at all. And I also struggled with this whole concept of, we're constantly hearing about all the trauma they suffered under the mountain and how terrible, I can't remember the name of this woman who was ruling under the mountain now. Because if Rye's so amazing and is so powerful, why was she so obsessed with having Tamlin as her like consort? Why were we sold that and not Rysand? It didn't kind of add up. And if she's so powerful and she was so manipulative and all of this, why was she giving Feyre chance after chance after chance after chance to break the spell or whatever? It just felt a bit daft. Anyway, it's probably a plot you're not supposed to pick apart. But these things happen. And then, because if she was so awful, you've then got other characters within that to kind of lend to the threat. So it's like this king person who's going to be worse than her, and like her ex-lover, and we're like, they're coming back and we're all scared of them. But I'm still not getting the tension and the fear from them that I should be having. I don't feel that they're really coming and that it's a threat at the moment. And I also feel that 9 queens from the mortal world were just kind of thrown in there. There's no explanation of where they come from or what kind of their power structure is or what relation they are to the mortal world, or Feyre kind of having any reaction. She used to be immortal, so you would think she'd know of these queens and would have kind of like, oh my goodness, these were the people that I revered as a child or something. And it's all just there about a book. So that felt a little bit like, give us a bit more, come on. And the most interesting character obviously was the one that Feyre hated, and felt like was going to screw them over, but then actually she believed them was going to screw the other guys over. And then she died, and I was like, oh, well, that was a loss of an interesting character. Well done. And the other interesting character was the Bone Carver, who we met right at the beginning of the book. And I was like, what are they? What's their deal? This is intriguing. But I have a feeling they're just going to be a thing there to tell Feyre stuff. Like, that's their purpose. We're not going to get any more explanation of how they came into being or why they're trapped in this prison or anything. If we do, marvellous. But my feeling is they're a thing to tell Feyre stuff, and that's their whole purpose. So you're probably wondering, if I'm slagging this off so much, why I'm going to be continuing with it. I am intrigued enough to see where it goes. Is it going to continue on its ridiculous journey? I am doing a chatty challenge where I read the most popular books over the last 7 years, according to Goodreads, and A Court of Silver Flames, the 4th one, won the 2021 one. So I want to be able to give my opinions on what I think of all the books, so I'm getting to the point of being there. But there will need to be very large gaps in between me picking up the different books so I can calm down in between. But everyone loves a little bit of a rant, and this is probably quite mild compared to other people's. I've seen other things where they go a lot more into it. Yeah, that was all I wanted to say on that one. I've already mentioned other stuff, so I'm not going to repeat myself. So yeah, we're done with that. We're moving on. Have I finished? Yes, I finished with that note. Okay, we're moving on to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, where I also have a lot to say. So, in a nutshell, I really enjoyed reading this book until we got to the end, and I felt like the end came out of nowhere, and the end has then kind of ruined my enjoyment of the story, because it's like, wait, that's the end? That's where you were heading for? I didn't get that in here. So I feel like I've been led up the garden path and then like suddenly thrown into like a pond or something. That's a stupid analogy. But basically I feel like the story was heading in one direction, and then at the last minute we've gotten here. And I just feel like, where's this come from? And it just feel like everything the story is kind of building up until that point just like is almost like redundant, and it just feel like it doesn't fit, and it doesn't feel holistic, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work for me. So all the bits that I loved before, I don't love. So it feels really awkward. So I'm going to go into that a bit more with the specifics. It was fun seeing her childhood and her love of drawing, and I really empathised with her wanting to not just be thrown into marriage and wanting to keep going with her drawing and go and see more of the world and have the life that she wanted to kind of like take control of it. So her yearning for independence, and that her marriage is the end of all the dreams, which then leads her to go and make this deal. I really enjoyed all of that. So I enjoyed this kind of relationship she had with this older woman whose name I've totally forgotten. I will just find it. Estelle, who's kind of like this wise woman character, and tells Addie all about the old gods. So then Addie starts to like leave little offerings and things to them. One thing that is never addressed in here is that when Addie makes a deal, she makes a massive mistake. There's a huge loophole that is exploited, so that what she was hoping for is almost like a torment. And she never addresses that. Like, is this whole kind of unwritten rule when you get to like the wishing kind of concept is that there's always the person giving the wishes is always going to try and exploit you. There's always going to be a loophole. Be careful what you wish for. All of those things. Addie never accepts any responsibility that maybe she did not word things properly, that maybe she wasn't wary and she should have been a bit more explicit with exactly what she wanted. She never admits that. She always blames it on the darkness, who is a dark demon soul eater. So he's not going to be looking out for her best interest and be kind to her because he's a dark demon soul eater and he wants her soul. So he's not going to make this fun and comfortable for her because he wants her soul. So that always kind of bothered me a little bit. So I enjoyed her journey to try and control this life and try and live even though no one will know her, and the struggle and everything that kind of that looks like. I really enjoyed seeing all of that playing out. I really enjoyed the scene, especially when the darkness mocks her for basically having fun because she's stolen some sweets from a posh house. And he's like, really, stealing sweets is kind of what you've given your soul up for. It's totally worth the price you've paid. And I like how that spurred her on to get more from her life and the experience than just surviving. Like, she wanted to try and get more out of it and show it was worth it. And I really enjoyed all of that aspect to it. I also really enjoyed the emotion of her first sort of like date, romance, sex, with, again, I've forgotten the name of the character, but she's dressed as a boy at this point, and he bumps into her and realises she's a girl and takes her out to have a drink of coffee, and they spend the day together. And it's so lovely seeing her have this connection and this kind of friendship with someone who knows she's a girl dressed as a man, but like appreciates her dream of like wanting to get more from life than what she's been given. And I love how it's just a really beautiful moment. It just feels really lovely watching all of that. And then the pain of when they wake up in the morning and he has no idea who she is. It's horrible and it's so upsetting, and I just thought that was so well done. And then that kind of like, I found that one that the most, out of all the relationships, I found that one the most heartfelt. Like we see her again with other people throughout her life, and it's that similar thing. But I think that first one, when you get that full realization, was so like so hard hitting. Like you really kind of get it, what she's got to live her life like. Another aspect that I don't think was really touched on as well is that we have throughout her childhood, the one thing she absolutely loves to do is draw. She loves to draw, but because of this curse, she cannot make a mark. So she can start, and then literally she watches as the lines fade from the paper. As someone who loves art, that must be soul destroying. You physically cannot do the thing you love. You've got all the time in the world to do it, you physically can't do it. And that's never really explored in this book. Art is definitely a theme, but it's almost like she's become the muse rather than the artist. So she's trying to help create art as much as she can, but that's very different to physically being able to draw and being able to express yourself that way. So I felt that was never really kind of touched on as much in here. I really love Henry. I love the character of Henry. And I really love Addie and Henry together. And that scene where he helps her draw again was again such an emotional high and really positive and heartfelt, where she's drawing in like the paint thing in this weird art show they go to, and he's following her movements, and because he's following after her, it stays. And I love that, and that's the only time it's alluded to, and I would have liked more of that. But maybe it wasn't necessary, and I'll come to that again in a moment. Where was I going? Yeah, so we have all of this kind of like the loneliness, the companionship, the loss, her trying to make her mark on everything. But all of those kind of themes then kind of disappear towards the end of the book, where we then get this kind of like weird relationship power play between her and the darkness kind of coming to the forefront. And this kind of took me out of the story a bit more, because if the darkness is going to be more of a prominent character than someone who just shows up from time to time to kind of gloat, then I'm going to start questioning what he's there for a bit more. So if he exists, what's he doing with all the souls? Why does he want them? Where do they go afterwards? What does he want from life? Is he literally just going around hiding in dark corners and wanting people's souls? But what does he get? Like, does it give him a life source? Is it like food? Is it just nice? Does he put them in little jars and have a collection and like play them like little TV remote when he gets bored? Like, what does he do with them? We are never told what he does with them. We never know why he's doing what he's doing. We see two different people. One who willingly goes, okay, I'm done, here's my soul. And one who's like, I haven't finished, and is dragged kicking and screaming. But we just see the demise of the human. We don't see what darkness is getting from it at all. So it also leads me on to, if we're hearing so much about him, surely we should have encountered other people. Like, it can't just be a darkness soul stealer as an old god. Like, there's more to the world than that. So where is it? I've taken so long to read all my notes and to chat about these books. My children are now awake, so I'm just relocating. Okay, back to Addie. So, so we get the idea that she starts this relationship. Oh, yes, I was confused why we didn't meet anyone else other than the darkness. I found that a bit strange that he's such a kind of clear big character in this, but we don't have anything otherworldly involved at all. Just makes me question it, that's all. Yeah, so Addie starts to crave his company because he's the only person that actually knows her, that knows her name, that recognises her, that remembers her. And that's a big draw when she's feeling really lonely and is craving companionship. And then that develops into them having sex and having a relationship. And that all came about because she was just craving someone to talk to and someone that knew her. Oh, no, I'm outside and my papers are flying away. Right. Tricky times. Okay. So that's kind of what confused me with where this book then went, because she still doesn't have that at the end. Like, she changed the deal, but what she got was saving Henry's life, and he wrote a book about her. So now people know her story, but they know of her, they don't know her. So she still doesn't have anyone to talk to. She doesn't have anyone who's going to remember her for more than a day, apart from the darkness. So the story, I don't feel that's enough. I feel like she's still kind of exactly where she was. I don't feel anything's changed from, but she seems really happy as though she's won, and I don't get it. I don't understand what she's won. Because I felt that everything was kind of leading us down to the path that she wanted someone to understand her. Like, she went in for this deal because the life she was going to lead wasn't the one she wanted. She wanted someone to kind of appreciate that she had an independence and dreams and aspirations that she could then have and go on. And she just, the entire time she was doing all of this, she felt so lonely. And everything she was doing was to try and have a connection, the art, to express herself. She still can't make a mark from what I can see. There is nothing said that she can now like draw again or write her name. All that's happened is that there is a book about her. So people will know her story, but they see her as a fictional character. They don't see her as a person. It's not a history. And she's not really still able to do anything with it. It's not like she can then go, oh, hi, this is me. Here's a book. She's still lonely. So I just kind of feel like the book didn't really go where it was heading, because she's unhappy about it. So it almost feels like the whole plot of her wanting like human companionship isn't as important as immortality to her. So actually what she wanted was immortality. And I kind of didn't get that from reading the book, that she just wanted to live forever and ever and ever and ever. So it's almost like to her, winning at this power play and being able to be alive forever was what she wanted. So it says apparently she's going to have it might even take 100 years for life, but she's going to get the darkness to tire of her and then she'll be free. It just feels a really grim outlook on it all. And it just feels like a really she's going to have a really petty time. But then if she has time forever, maybe it doesn't really mean anything to her. But was that what she wanted? Was it that she wanted to live forever? Was it that she was scared of death? Because that wasn't what I got from the story up until that point. And it just feels very morbid. So yeah, if she mentions that, to walk through time, to see life changes, to experience, revolution and inventions, that was worth it to her. But if that's the case, I needed more of that in the story, because we didn't see any of we just heard of the horror of the French Revolution. We didn't see any kind of excitement of women being able to be educated or be seen as equal, or any kind of it doesn't matter where you were born, you're still going to have the same rights as other people. So we didn't kind of hark on any of those positive changes. It was just fear and run away. And she kind of links it back to the Second World War. We have a very tiny scene, but that tiny scene was to kind of show a side to the darkness, not to kind of her experiencing the war. And I also don't understand how she was supposedly passing messages on when no one can remember her, because surely if she's passing it on verbally, they're going to forget her instantly. And if she's passing it on in a letter form, are they going to be suspicious of where this came from? Because no one's going to remember it being delivered, and no one's going to remember giving it to her. And are they going to then worry that they didn't send it? It doesn't quite seem logical. So I needed more of these life experiences and more of this interest in a yearning to travel and to see the world and see the wonders of the world. It was very much always more focused on people that we saw. Like her time in France, it was going to different places in there. There was occasional touching on that, you know, she saw a lovely sunset or she saw this building, but it was occasional. The main focus was on infiltrating into certain societies, connections she made with people and artists. Like that was the big thing. The art was the big thing. So yeah, it didn't feel that the story was headed where it wanted to be. And also it's like, because of this, it's almost like, well, Henry kind of then only existed to write her story, and that wasn't what he wanted to do. Like there was a scene where it said, people who work in a bookshop presume you're writing a book, but he never wanted to write a book. His interests were in photography and theology. So what about Henry? What about his dreams? Where does that go? His bizarre family relationship, that was all changed once he got his deal. He will now be able to have normal relationships again, but how is he going to cope with all of that? So I think basically Schwab and I do not mix with what we want from stories. So I like her writing, I like her characters, but I can't cope with her plots. Her plots don't work for me at all. So yeah, it's sad, but there we are. And that is why I did not love Addie LaRue, because I just felt the ending came out of nowhere, and it really confused me. So I'm going to move on now to The Emperor's Soul. Sorry, I'm having to hold the camera phone because it's a bit damp out here. I don't want to put it down on a wet surface, and I'm worried if I leave things too long, I'm never going to finish this video. So The Emperor's Soul. I really loved the magic system in this and the whole concept of soul stamps. So how you carve like a stamp, like, you know, those little library stamps that you used to get. It says that people call them chops. I've never heard of them being called a chop before. I've heard of seals and like signet rings, and stamps. I've not heard of them being called chops. Anyway, so you can craft a stamp, and you can stamp an object and kind of change that object when you stamp it. Like you can't change it deliberately. Like you can't turn like a table into a dog, but you can alter what the table used to think about itself, that it can change the appearance of the table. And what Shay, the main character, does is see what things used to be and return them to what they were before. So for example, in a window, it used to she can tell by like the frame and things that this used to contain stained glass. So she does a soul stamp and returns it, sorry, paper's flying, returns it to being a stained glass window. So I love all of that magic system. I think it's really, really cool. And I love the playing with politics, and all the game playing that's in here, as all the officials of the sorry of the Empire ask Shai, who is a prisoner for fraud, to help them return the Emperor to himself. So like his I think he's got brain damage or something, I'm not entirely sure, but basically like they have his body and he's very ill, and they want him to be the Emperor or they're going to lose their power position. So she has soul stamped a person before. She's got 7 of her own soul stamps, where each of them contains like a different kind of history she could have had, or how she would have reacted if she'd been brought up a certain way or trained a certain way. So she's got like one is like a beggar, where she knows all of like the street things. She's got one of a warrior, where she's done like army training and things like that, so she can stamp herself with these and change her abilities. And she very much sees what she does as art. It's a really difficult thing to do, but in the society they live in, it's seen as what's the word? It's seen as sinful. It's like really against the law on like a religious level, as well. Like it's an abomination. That's it. It's an abomination. So so that's why she's imprisoned. But they realise they need her, and they're going to use this abomination for their own political gains, which is very interesting. So you have 2 of the, what are we going to call them? What do they call them? the people, I called them the officials, I'm just going to use that word because I can't think of a better one, the officials in government. We have Favre, who on the surface appears most open to what Shay does, but Shay very much feels there's like a game going on behind here, and that she should watch her back. And then we have Gastona. Is it Gastona? I can't read my own writing here. I'm going to go with Gastona. If it's not, I do apologise. And he does not agree with what she does. And he's like, but you are so talented. Why are you wasting like this? Why don't you do your own original art? And she's like, but I do art. This is art. And so you have this really interesting relationship between them of like him wanting to understand what she does and having an aptitude to see what she does, but not appreciating why she loves it and why she feels that it's not an abomination. So I really enjoy their relationship of this kind of like growing respect between them and this kind of barrier of a different way of seeing things that they have to overcome. So I loved their relationship, and how she convinces him that what she does is art. And then at the end you have this ending was just so perfect because of like previous conversations they'd had about art, and it kind of goes back to that conversation, and he ends up having to do what she did that he thought was horrendous, and it's just such a beautiful kind of rounding off of this story. And I just love how it all just comes together so well. It's all just brilliantly crafted and just perfectly put in this really just small little book, and I just really recommend. I just absolutely recommend it, regardless of whether you've read Sanderson before or anything like that. I just think this story is fabulous. The final book we are on now. Can I hold it up without all the notes blowing in the wind? She Who Became the Sun. There we go. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to pause it while I reorganise. Okay, we're nearly done, although I have a few notes for this. So She Who Became the Sun. When I was first hearing about it, I understood that people liked one part of the book but not the other part. And it's not as set into two parts as I thought it was going to be. So part one is less than a quarter of the book, and that is all about Zoo becoming a novice monk. So hiding the fact she's a girl so she can get an education and try and take her brother's destiny. And then 3/4 of it is part two, which is where Zoo kind of enters the war camps and kind of works her way up to try and take hold of this destiny of greatness that belonged to her brother that she wants. And then part 3 is her realising she is her and not her brother. And yeah, so I thought it was going to be a much more kind of like half split, and it wasn't. And I loved the book as a whole. I thought the story was fabulous. So I had mentioned already that this one does have like some violence in it, but it is done it is really well done. So the violent executions are kind of written in a sentence, and the focus is not on the step-by-step what is physically happening to that person as they're executed. It is very much on the characters who are watching the execution and their feelings about it and their concerns about the outcome and its meaning and how this then plays out for them. So we know what's happening. We can appreciate that we're in a violent land and that there are some atrocities going on, but we don't need it flung in our face. So if you're not a fan of violence and like step-by-step things, then this might be okay for you. So it like sets up the scene and the atmosphere without needing to go into kind of like the nitty-gritty detail. I really enjoy the attraction and the flirtation that builds up into a relationship between Zoo and Ma Zoying. I'm going to say Zoying. Apologies if that pronunciation is not correct. They're really good for each other. Zoo makes Ma realise she can want more than what society will get. Society is giving her. You know, she's a woman. She hasn't got a lot of options. But Zoo makes her not just settle for what she's given in life and want more beyond it. And Ma reminds Zoo that compassion, of compassion and human kindness, which Zoo has kind of like left behind on their, on her path to wanting this destiny. There is a detailed sex scene, but I found it really beautifully written, and it was really highlighted the relationship between Ma's feelings for Zoo and how she sees Zoo, and I just thought it was really lovely, which is not what you expect to say of a fisting scene, but there we go. And I just enjoyed the two of them together. I just think they're really cute. And I enjoyed the banter in their relationship. There is, it's like built up really well, and I just really like how they are with each other, and it does grow and develop, and Ma doesn't necessarily agree with some of Sue's decisions, and I just enjoy how they try and work around that, and well, there isn't really a compromise because Sue doesn't really compromise, but I do just enjoy the relationship. I'm really kind of keen to see where it goes, and I hope that the characters stay. There is kind of really endearing quality and a sweetness about them, but considering kind of where they are at the end of the book and kind of where they could be heading, I hope they don't lose those qualities in the next one. Another character that isn't really mentioned but is almost like a second protagonist, like an adversary, is again, apologies for pronunciation, General Ouyang, who is a eunuch, and he feels a lot of shame in that he is a eunuch. There is a belief that a lack of genitals makes you not a man, and he really just totally buys into that, and is very sensitive about it. I do find it slightly amusing that the thought that because he can't penetrate a woman means he is then allowed in the women's quarters. It's like, that's all it takes for you to be allowed in the women's quarters. You're now no longer a threat. I just find it really ridiculous and entertaining. He does not find it so. He's treated as neither gender, despite the fact that he's still very clearly a man. But because of that, he's really then like got this developed hatred of femininity and women, which is one, interesting, but two, really uncomfortable to read sometimes. Like, it's very misogynistic, and it's really weird because you do feel empathy for this character that has been castrated, and then has got this shame following him and is treated as lesser by other characters. So it's very weird to kind of like have that empathy, but then like feel really uncomfortable when they're being very misogynistic and then not like them. So it's very weird. Like, I don't like the character, but I am empathetic towards him. And I really love that this is actually addressed, and this is like pulled into perspective by a character called Madame Zhang, who is very enjoyable. We don't see a lot of her, but I feel she's going to be a key player in the next book. I also do feel empathy for General Ouyang because of his kind of this revenge plot and this kind of honour system that is making him basically needing to take revenge on the family that killed his family. But he has since developed a really strong friendship with the son, the eldest son of the family that did that to him. So he's got these really conflicting loyalties, which is really interesting reading, and as you kind of don't know which way it's going to go or how it's going to come out. But the character I do really like, even though sadly he does not, he does show contempt for Ouyang because of being a eunuch. But I do really like this character, and that is, again, apologies on pronunciation, Lord Wang Boxiang. Boxiang. I've not said it aloud before. Boxiang. I'm going with Boxiang. And he is the adopted son of Prince Henan, who is the family that killed the family of Ouyang. It's all very complicated. So Prince Henan, known as Chang'an and his son Essen, they are warriors. And they respect battle courage, and they respect physicality and strength. But Boxing is an administrator. He is the one sort of like a steward for like the family estate, sorting out the taxes and dealing with all the needs for the people that they are responsible for, and gathering money to feed the army. He sort of is dealing with all these wealth wars and things, but everything he does is just seen as lesser because he doesn't go into battle, and he's just seen as lesser because he's not a warrior, because he doesn't want to pick up a sword, because he doesn't want to go and fight something, and because he doesn't buy into the masculine idea that fighting something brings you glory and honor. He's like, yeah, but not if you're skint. So I'm going to try now and read a paragraph that I just thought really kind of goes into that beautifully. Okay, it's quite a long scene than I thought. Sorry, bad camera angles here. Okay. You have no idea what I've been doing for you this entire time. You don't even care enough to know. Don't you realise that I'm the only reason you still have an estate? Without the roads and irrigation and tax collections, do you think you'd even have the funds to continue serving the Great Khan? Your only value to him lies in your army, and you wouldn't even have an army. You'd be nothing but a washed-up provincial whose lands are being swallowed on one side by the rebels and bulled on the other. Pages just need to secure them. Essen felt a pang of embarrassment on Bozing's behalf. Didn't he see how badly it reflected on himself to try and equate the work that Essen and Yoang did and that Chagan had done before them with the paperwork that occupied Bozing's days? Chagan spat. Listen to you. Irrigation. We're Mongols. We don't farm. We don't dig ditches. Our armies are the Great Khan's arm in the south, and as long as the Great Yuan exists, our family will defend it with honour and glory. Do you actually believe the idiocy that comes out of your mouth? Bozing sneered. Perhaps I didn't speak plainly. Enough. Without me, Henan would have fallen already, whether or not you have bulled support. Rebellions promise the followers everything we fail to give. So if your peasants are starving, your soldiers unpaid, don't think they'll be loyal to you or the Mongols or the Great Yuan. They join without a second thought. The only reason they don't is because I govern and tax and administer. I pay their salaries and rescue their families from disaster. I am the Yuan. I uphold it more than you can ever do with brute force of your swords. But in your hearts, don't you still think of me as worthless? So I love all of that philosophy. I think it's fantastic. But yes, they do. They see him as worthless. They don't listen to a word he says. And it's all very tragic for them. So I really root for Bozing, the champion of administrators and the backbone of all organisations. Go Bozing. Another thing I wanted to talk about within this book is obviously someone with more someone with their own experience can comment with more authority on this. But I did feel that the disability rep was done well. There's a character who loses an arm, and I thought that was shown really well, and the character was still wonderfully them. I did enjoy, so this was taken by General Ouyang, and I enjoyed the thought process that he presumed that a physical disability, because it causes a loss of respect and inner shame, a soldier is proof of his strength in his sword arm, that this was going to really damage the character that he took that from, which is something we saw, Game of Thrones spoiler, in A Storm of Swords, with Jaime Lannister having his hand. But this was not the case. It had an opposite effect, and I really loved that happened. Is that everything? Oh, no, there we go. Notes are up here. I really enjoyed this book. I think that's everything I wanted to say about it. Looking forward to the second book. We now have Zhu as the head of the Red Turban Rebels, and Madame Zhang with her very well manipulated husband and her brother-in-law lover, who is now she is basically the head of the Zhang family, and they call themselves the Kingdom of Salt. So I predict there's going to be a power struggle, which is going to be very interesting from both sides. But I am scared for Zhu and for Ma, because when you reach the top, all you can do is fall, and I really don't want them to. Okay, that is all the spoilers I have for all of these books. Please let me know in the comments all your thoughts on this. And have you read these? Do you have similar opinions, or do you have different ones? I always love a chat. Happy reading, everyone.